I remember the day like it was yesterday. It was a sunny afternoon when my phone chimed with a new message. "Hey, have you heard? Your old man sold the house." Mike. My heart pounded in my chest as I read the words over again, praying they were some kind of twisted joke. But Mike was never one for humor, especially when it came to family matters. Heat rose in me, a hot mix of betrayal and disbelief. I felt the threads of our strained relation, already worn thin, starting to snap. The taste of the question was like vinegar in my mouth, but I had to know. I dialed Mike's number with trembling fingers. "Mike, tell me you're pulling my leg." Mike sighed, a heavy, resigned sound that sank into the pit of my stomach. "I wish I was, man. My father sold my childhood home, the house where I took my first steps, learned to ride a bike, and had my first heartbreak. The place my mother had poured her soul into, turning every corner into a warm memory until her last breath. He sold it without uttering a word to me. Why would he do this, Mike, without telling me?" My voice was choked with unshed tears. "I don't know," he replied softly. "He's been acting strange, distant." The rest of the day passed in a blur of anger and confusion. I was lost in the maze of my thoughts, haunted by the images of lazy summers in that house, Christmas mornings, whispered secrets, and laughter echoing off the walls. The walls that were no longer ours. I had to confront him, but when I tried to call, my father didn't pick up. His voicemail was as impersonal as his unannounced decision. "This is Richard. Leave a message." I left no message. My words would be wasted over an answering machine. This needed to be faced in person. Days lapsed into a frenzied whirl of unanswered calls and steeping resentment. I was desperate for answers. From him, from anyone. Desperate enough to buy back that old house, as if I could somehow regain the stolen pieces of my past. The for sale sign still clung to the front lawn when I arrived, a cruel, inanimate testament of my father's betrayal. I was a stranger in a place that was once so familiar, the scent of new paint and unfamiliarity seeping into the spaces once so deeply entrenched with memories. But the emptiness couldn't erase the echoes of laughter and whispers of the past. The new homeowners were warm and kind, a stark contrast to the coldness that currently defined my relationship with my father. It felt odd helping them unpack boxes in rooms that had once held my own belongings. Most homes have a sense of familiarity, a lived-in atmosphere that whispers tales of shared meals, funny stories, and sleepy-eyed mornings. My childhood home now had an unsettling quietude, a silence that seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. One evening, while assisting with unpacking in the attic, I stumbled upon a sealed box tucked away in a corner. It was marked in my father's handwriting. Richard and Elaine, private. My heart pounded in my chest as I picked up the box. I hesitated at the sealed tape, my fingers trembling with mixed emotions. This was a part of my parents' lives they had kept hidden. Did I have the right to invade their privacy? The question of why my father had sold the house nagged at me, gnawing at the edges of my conscience. I tore at the tape with a sense of dreadful anticipation. The contents of this box, buried in the house he so hastily sold, might hold the answers to the questions that had been eating me alive. As I peeled back the folded cardboard flaps, I braced myself for whatever secrets lay within. The decision to buy back my childhood home wasn't an easy one. It was a heavy burden to shoulder, tangled in a web of nostalgia, resentment, and unprocessed emotions. I thought about the tire swing we'd hung on the old oak in the backyard, the countless birthdays celebrated, the lifelong friends made, each memory serving as a brick in the foundation of the house. I wasn't just buying back a property, I was reclaiming a piece of my past. At nights I would lay awake wrestling with my thoughts. Did I have the right to stake a claim on a piece of land that was no longer mine just because it housed my memories? Was I being selfish? Or was I just trying to put right a wrong that was done to me? I grappled with this internal tussle, and in the end, the longing for my old home won. I made up my mind. and I decided to reclaim what my father had so thoughtlessly discarded. Raising the funds, though, that was a struggle. I had a decent job, but I was no millionaire. Trying to negotiate the purchase with the current owners was an uphill battle. They didn't want to sell. It hurt to think that these strangers felt more strongly about my home than my own father did. But, with a cocktail of stubbornness, persistence, and a dash of luck, the owners and I came to an agreement. The house was to be mine once again. The fallout with my father, however, couldn't be solved with a mere contract. He'd sold the house without consulting me, our home, our memories, replaced with a hefty bank deposit. Our relationship strained, strangled by unspoken truths and raw resentment, became a barren wasteland. We entered a silent war as I signed the final documents to repurchase the house. "Are you really going to go through with this, son?" he asked me, anger simmering beneath the surface of his calm exterior. His voice held a hint of exasperation, perhaps even disappointment in his tone. "Funny, Dad," I retorted. "I was about to ask you the same thing." He didn't understand. To him, it was just a house, an asset he could sell off when the need arose. But to me, it was so much more. It was my childhood encapsulated, my growth, my becoming. To me, it was home. Returning to the house that day, the bitter divide between us was pulpier than ever. The walls, once echoing with laughter and heartwarming conversations, now reverberated with our silence. A silence that told a story of a son trying to salvage the remnants of his childhood, and a father who couldn't comprehend the weight of the loss. As I walked through the corridors after buying it back, my eyes skimmed over the familiar cracks in the wall, the worn-out stairs, the mustiness enveloping the rooms. It was as if I was stepping back in time. For a moment, I was that young, innocent, carefree boy again, blissfully unaware of the cruel trick time could play. But reality soon caught up. The happiness I had hoped to feel was replaced by a profound sadness. This wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. I had bought back my childhood home, but in the process, I had lost something far more valuable. My relationship with my father was on the rocks, our bonds strained. I felt a pang of regret. Was all of this worth it? As I grappled with the turmoil of emotions, I couldn't help but feel that my fight to regain my past had caused me to risk my present. This house, full of decades of memories, had become the battleground of a struggle between my father and me. And as I stood there in the deafening silence, the bitter taste of reality seeping in, I knew that some battles are fought not for victory, but just to know what's worth fighting for. My fight was far from over. It was just beginning. As the secret of why my father sold the house still loomed in the shadows, I had nothing but this silence and my determination to unearth the truth. Little did I know, the truth would unravel the darkest secret our family hid in the heart of this house. And as I fought to reclaim my past, I would soon discover that the past sometimes holds secrets best left alone. Until then, I just had to brace myself for the storm to come. The following day was filled with a surreal blend of curiosity, trepidation, and determination. I slowly made my way through the house, room by room, reflecting on cherished memories and uncovering hidden facets of this place my heart called home. I had known every corner, every creak in the floorboards, and every whisper from the old pipes, or so I thought. Late in the afternoon, I wandered into the old den where my father used to spend his evenings reading the Wall Street Journal. I always admired its robust mahogany bookshelves stretching towards the ceiling, and the scent of aged paper and musky leather was as familiar as my heartbeat. As I ran my fingers along the worn-out leather spines, one of them felt peculiarly different. It was almost hollow. Feeling my heart pound like a sledgehammer against my ribs, I pulled the book off the shelf. It wasn't a book at all, but a cleverly designed box. Hidden within, there was a small, dusty key. My heart raced with anticipation and dread. This was an unforeseen twist in a house I thought I knew by heart. I looked around the room, trying to figure out what the key could unlock. Nothing stood out. I felt baffled and frustrated. That night, sleep eluded me. My mind was a whirlwind of questions and half-formed theories. The silence of the house, once comforting, now felt eerie and foreboding. In the cold light of the next morning, I returned to the den, determined to solve the mystery of the hidden key. I scoured every inch of the room until I found myself staring at the massive antique branding iron displayed above the hearth. Suddenly, I noticed a thin, almost invisible line running horizontally across the wooden wall beneath it. Holding my breath, I pressed against the concealed panel, and it creaked open reluctantly. Behind it was a hidden space, a secret room concealed impeccably. The air was heavy with age and the scent of secrets. I hesitated before stepping in, not sure what I'd find in this clandestine space. At the center of the room stood an old desk, cluttered with papers, notebooks, and photographs. With my heart in my mouth, I started going through them, revealing a history that was purposely hidden from me. The notebooks were filled with detailed entries, written in my father's precise handwriting. As I delved deeper into their contents, I realized they were accounts of illicit deals, shady real estate transactions, properties in offshore locations, and details of money siphoned off to anonymous accounts. It was a ledger of deceit and corruption. Strewn around were old black and white photographs, a much younger version of my father, surrounded by unsmiling men I didn't recognize. But one man did seem familiar, the old lawyer who facilitated the purchase of my childhood home. A chilling realization dawned upon me. He wasn't just a family lawyer, he was my father's partner in crime. My mind reeled from the implications of this shocking discovery. My beloved father, the man I had respected and admired, was not who he pretended to be. He had built our lives on a foundation of deceit. Everything I thought I knew about him, about us, was a lie. Outside, the night had set in. The once comforting darkness seemed intimidating now, as if mocking my naivety. I sat there in the concealed room, shaken and broken, surrounded by the debris of my father's duplicity. A disturbing revelation about the man I held dear, a truth that I wished remained hidden. There was no denying it now. My father sold my childhood home to bury his secrets, not to move on from the past. With a heavy heart, I trudged back to the familiar, yet now forever changed rooms of my childhood home. The walls whispered ominously, echoing my father's deceit. The cozy warmth was replaced with an icy chill of betrayal. I felt like an intruder in my own home, a stranger in my own past. This was the terrible price for uncovering secrets. The innocence of childhood memories was tainted, and the love for my father replaced by a rising tide of resentment. As the long night of revelation passed, I was left with a bitter truth. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. My father was in his study, a room that had once been filled with the warm scent of pipe tobacco, hardbound books, and love. Now, it was just as cold and distant as the man huddled over the desk. He looked up, his eyes shadowed with dark circles of worry and regret. A bottle of bourbon, more than half empty, was perched precariously on the corner of the desk. "Dad," I began, my voice quivering with a myriad of emotions, rage, betrayal, hurt. "We need to talk." He sighed, rubbing his temple as though expecting this confrontation. "About the house?" he asked. "About everything. Why did you sell our home, Dad? Why didn't you tell me?" I demanded, my heart pounding in my chest. His face turned even more grave, something I didn't think possible. "I didn't think it was necessary," he replied, his words blunt, setting off a spark of fury in me. "What do you mean necessary? It was our home, Dad. It's where we were a family. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" Tears welled up in my eyes, but I fought them back. I wanted him to see my anger, my pain. "I was protecting you," he said after a long silence, causing me to falter. Protecting me? From what? I asked, the anger in me now slowly giving way to a dread. A secret. A secret that poisoned this family. Something in his voice, a trace of vulnerability maybe, made me pause. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. What secret, Dad? My father looked at me with a mixture of pain and relief. Perhaps he had been waiting for this moment, carrying a burden alone for years. Your mother, he croaked, his voice barely a whisper. She didn't leave us, like I told you. She died here, in this house. The room spun. I groped for a chair, barely managing to sit down before my legs gave out under me. Mom hadn't left us. She hadn't chosen to start a new life, abandoning her husband and child. She had died, and I had spent years nursing a grudge against her for something she hadn't done. Why didn't you tell me? I managed to croak out. My father was crying now, tears freely flowing down his weathered cheeks. I thought it would hurt less if you believed she had left us, that you wouldn't associate this house with her tragic ending. And what about me, Dad? What about my right to know, my right to grieve? What about my feelings? I thought I was doing the best thing for you, he sobbed. I was wrong. I see that now. The confession, the regret in his voice, it all moved something in me. I felt something. Not forgiveness, not yet. But understanding, maybe. The anger that had consumed me gave way to a deep, aching sadness. Dad, I whispered, reaching out to hold his hand. We need to grieve, both of us. We need to remember her, not hide from her memory. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. The rest of the night was spent sharing, crying, and opening up about the woman who had left an indelible mark on both our lives. We didn't solve everything that night, but it was a start, a step towards healing from deep-seated pain. As I left the study, I took one last look at my father, a broken man bearing the weight of his decisions. That night, I not only confronted my father about the secret in our house, but also pierced through years of anger and misunderstanding. We had a long way to go, but we were facing it together, our bond made stronger through shared pain. I think it was nightfall when I finally pulled myself together. The sky matted the fading streaks of the sun with the purples and blues of impending darkness. I had spent the day in the attic, among the ghosts of my past, the pain of betrayal, the holes in our family narrative, and the ricochets of my father's dark secret. I took a deep breath, feeling the dust-filled air fill my lungs, and made my decision. I was going to confront my father. All those unanswered questions, the uncertainty, and the feeling like I was trudging through a thick fog were too much. I needed clarity. I needed closure. The following day, I drove to my father's house. My stomach knotted as if I were a teenager again, my hand steady on the wheel. The conversation was difficult, full of silences that spoke volumes and words that could hardly cover the truth. But we stumbled through it, two people bound by biology, history, and a lifetime of shared experiences. Dad, I said, finally mustering the courage to ask my question. Why did you sell the house without telling me? Why did you keep this secret from me? He looked at me, gray eyes reflective in his aged-lined face. His shoulders sagged as if he carried a burden far heavier than his 75 years. Then he told me. He told me about the debt, about the years he struggled to keep our home afloat, about the bailiffs, and how he had hoped selling the house would save us. But he also said that he couldn't bear to tell me, didn't want to taint my memories of our home with his failures, didn't want to burden me with his mistakes. I absorbed this, a painful lump forming in my throat. I thought about my own life, the missed opportunities, the failed relationships, the mistakes I too had made. I realized that we were not all that different. Just two people, bound by our past and our faults, fighting our private battles. It hurt to hear his confession, to realize the depth of his despair, but it also gave me a glimpse of the man my father truly was. Flawed, complicated, but undeniably human. For the first time in years, we connected, not as father and son, but as two individuals navigating the often tough waters of life. There were confessions, apologies, and time-worn truths that came to light. As we talked, I began to see my father not as a figurehead, but as a fellow man. I saw his fortitude, his weaknesses, his regrets, and his efforts to make it right. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity, filled with renovations and endless dust clouds, and apologies that tasted like freedom. I moved into my childhood home, a place that held years of memories, of love and laughter, and a secret that had ultimately brought me closer to my father. I saw my father more often in those weeks than I had in a decade. We worked on the house together, repaired the broken pipes, scrubbed the walls till they gleamed, and painted the rooms with colors that were bold and bright, a tribute to a new beginning. While laboring away on the architecture of my childhood, I found myself healing too. Each hammer stroke seemed to mend some broken part inside me, and each shared laugh with my father built a new memory over the old painful ones. This house, these walls, this very foundation carried so much of our past, so much of our story. And so, as I put the finishing touches on the house, I felt a renewed sense of connection with my father, and a deep sense of love for this home. My home. Our home. A place that had seen us at our worst, but had ultimately brought out our best. A place that bore the marks of our past, our mistakes, and our redemption. The house carries our stories, our secrets, and our shared history. It stands as a symbol of our struggles, our triumphs, and our deep, abiding love for each other. As I look at my father, I see a newfound understanding in his eyes. I see forgiveness, acceptance, and most importantly, I see love. And for the first time in a long time, I feel at home.